Let's see what happens. Okay, here we are live on YouTube. So we'll just give it another minute, see how many people trickle in here, and we'll see. All right, let me go back to Zoom here. Okay, so Allana, still with us?
Still with ya.
Amazing. All right. Well, we're here live on YouTube, and we're with Allana Henderson, designer of the year in my books.
I wish.
Yeah. So we're kind of chatting today, just bringing to light some things that people may not know that about design, or what makes, I don't even know what makes good design, or what makes good lines in a house, you know, what type of things are pleasing to the eye. So what brings you, what inspires you to, like, you see a space and you say, I can do this and I can do that. Like, what do you look for in that type of space, or that type of new house that you're going to buy?
Well, I think since I was a kid, the biggest thing that I notice when I go into a house is light. When you walk into a house and it's dark, or there's small windows, it's not exposing the sun and the views outside. I think that everybody feels that in a house, and you being in real estate as well and taking real estate shots, I'm sure your photography depends a lot on light as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's the single most factor that makes a house, feel good. And so, if you can have a vision how to brighten a home, how to make it, feel happy and cheery and, and good, it starts with light and windows. And, what I've learned over the years renovating is that, a small window is not a limitation. A small window, you make a bigger window. And,
right.
You have to understand where the light is throughout the day and where you live in each space, what times of the day you live in a space, and then you maximize that. So.
Awesome. So how would you like bring in light? Because I remember our old house that we lived in, we would struggle with bringing light in, although if it was one particular part of the day, it would stream right in through this small front window. So what do you kind of do? Do you just blow out the wall and make bigger windows, or how would you do that on a budget? Maybe the two tiers of saying, like, the dream world and then like the budget world.
Okay, so, well, dream world. I mean, I think people, design is a very interesting thing. I think people are very intimidated by renovations, by the cost of design, by the cost of materials, these days. You have to prioritize in any project. So when I take over a project, I absolutely prioritize what's the most important thing for this property to bring it to its full potential. So like a house, that has, like, let's say it's, its sun exposure is limited. Well, where do you want to live in that house during the sunniest part of the day? Or let's say you're an afternoon person and you like to, read in the afternoon, or you're working from home and you want a space that, like, is filled with sunlight in either in the morning or in the afternoon. That's your priority right there, because that's how you live. So I think people have to understand that we can't do everything in renovation. We can't do everything in design unless you have oodles of money.
Right.
But if you understand how you live and what makes you happy, like, we have a room in the house here that in the morning, it's, perfect for having a coffee and reading the morning news. And that, that room is flooded with light, with morning sunlight, so that's a super important thing. So budget wise, I think, people have to understand that you can enlarge windows very, very easily on a small budget. On a bigger budget, you could build a summer porch or put in French doors, build a patio, just create spaces where you want to live in your house. I think that's like the most important thing. I want all my homes to feel like a vacation home. So
it's also interesting too, like a lot of things about home design, I find, especially shooting it, is all about, it sounds contrived, but it's all about like a moment, like I like to have my coffee here and like building a space around that. And especially when I do shoots of the house, it's, there's always something to be pointed out, like, oh, make sure you get a picture of the breakfast nook over there or something like that. So it's always about like a moment in someone's day, which I always find interesting, and approach photography in that way. It's like, well, where do you play with the kids? Let's put some kids' toys in the basement and or in the rec room or something like that, where we can kind of build that story, as general as that sounds. It's just something to put somebody in the moment, that they may not look at the old wallpaper or the paint color of the house, something like that. It just gets them into that mood that we're trying to capture, or they're trying to convey, basically. So it's interesting that it goes all the way through from design to photography.
Well, and I think what you're saying, Matt, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think what you're saying is super important. That, like, I talk about light, but if you have young kids, you want to build a space that's, you're thinking about functionality, and you're thinking about having a playroom with storage where you can put all the toys at the end of the day. And people have to see, and I think this is why you're very good at what you do, because you're able to see that, like, photography is as creative as design, because you have to understand what people need from a house. And when people are going through listings on a website, they're looking for what their own personal hot buttons are, and you're capturing that. I'm creating that, and you're capturing that. So, people need to see themselves in the space, and that's super important. So everybody has different needs.
Yeah. So what can't you work with? What have you encountered that's basically saying, like, listen, this, you need to tear this thing to the rafters in order to make this work?
That's actually a great question. I think, well, the
Why,
only
thank you.
property that I think the only, thing that I find is a little bit of a challenge is uneven floors, to tell you the truth. I love old properties with a little bit of character. And all of my homes that I buy have some historic element to them. And it's about creating something that you're preserving the history of the house, and reflecting what, the people and, the life of the house before you got there, but modernizing it to bring, current generations into the house. So the only thing that I really find intimidating is uneven floors. Because I've seen floors that have like a 2-inch difference from the front to the back, and you don't want to me, that's something that I wouldn't want to get into. It's a little more tough. Even when you're changing floors, it's, that's a tough thing to fix. So, but foundations and, I've done it all in terms of renovation. So.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that I'm sure you go in with a plan and a budget, and then you get there and trip over 100-year-old step or something like that, and it just balloons into this giant job that you didn't necessarily anticipate for. But so I could see that being able to recognize the telltale signs of, oh, this floor is not good, and it's going to cost me so much more. So that's good. I just want to remind the people that are watching, there is the chat box somewhere on the screen. that you can type some questions into, and we can try to answer them. Yeah, it's always funny that for me, when I come into a home or a condo or something like that, I always say that the way I shoot it is wall to wall. So it's basically what you're going to see is everything in this space, and anything that is in the room you're going to see. So people will be like, oh, are you going to see this? Should I move this? It's like, if you can see it now, you're going to see it in the picture, so you should probably move it if you hate it. And you get hung up on the details a little bit, but again, when I tell people like, oh, what do you do? It's like, oh, I do a lot of real estate photography. It's like, oh, so you're that asshole that I walk into a room and it's the size of a telephone booth, but when I looked at your picture, it was a mansion. It's like, yeah. It's like, I really want to hit you in the face right now. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm good at what I do. What can I say? So, which brings me to representing the property and through photos, basically enhancing them. What I tried to do is basically what I call hyper realistic, which is like, when you get there, it's gonna basically look like that. It just may not be as bright. It may not be as sharp. I try not to fake it too much because I don't want to misrepresent it. But maybe you can just touch on, let's say we're doing an editorial for one of your designs for a print ad or something, where the objective is to enhance it as much as possible. Do you find that helps in terms of showing your spaces?
Well, it's really interesting, especially when you're working with older homes. Okay, so there's a lot of homes. I mean, there's a lot of different types of homes. So if you're renovating, let's say a 1980s house versus a 1950s house, you're dealing with a lot of like completely different constraints, because 1980s homes, that's, when the open concept, it was starting to become a thing, like the open concept. Right. So I think that what we strive to do, like the house that I'm in right now, it actually, this project, we started in 2016, and this house was actually a barn. And through the years, it was from the 1950s, 1948 actually. And through the years, the additions that were put in onto the house, they were built in a linear fashion. So the house, when I purchased it, it was actually very, very narrow, and it felt very, very tight, because it was a more narrow house, and it's built on a lengthwise. So my goal was to do exactly what you just said in terms of what your photography is. I want people to feel that when you're taking a picture of the house, that's how they're going to feel when they come into the house. And I think that, people often, like, if you're really good at what you do, which, you are, and your photographs are amazing.
Shucks.
So,
oh, gee.
That's $10, by the way, but
yeah. Okay.
So
yeah.
Basically, people, they feel that, oh, that's a nice wide open space. Well, that's what I had to actually create in this property when I started renovating it. And that means taking down walls and whatever. So enhancing, like, you can never, basically, and you know this, Matt, you don't want to enhance something to misrepresent the buyer, to misrepresent the client. And so brightening something up, I think, allows people to be invited to the property. And honestly, your angles are some of the best, that I've seen any photographers do, because like, you really feel like, okay, I get this space and now I need to go visit the space. And so, I just think that you can enhance a little bit to create a feeling, but when people get here, they still have to feel what you're representing in your photographs, So I think, one thing that I've been looking at a lot lately, because I've been looking at some older properties, is, I think we all have a little bit of house envy. We all want to look at the home shows and the renovation shows, and we want to look at pictures of, especially now during COVID, that we're at home so much. people want to feel good in their space. And so when you're looking at a picture and that picture makes you feel good, you want to actually feel that way in your own space. But people don't understand how to do that, how to make their space feel peaceful or inviting or bright. And, you know, there's simple fixes. It's like you said, when you take pictures and there's things in the way of the picture that you want to take out of the picture. It's the same way when we're living in our space. If there's things that bother us in our space, decluttering, taking those things out of the space, maybe painting things a brighter color or, you know, more neutral color, that will enable us to actually enjoy the space more, you know? So I think we all aspire to do what we see in the pictures. And there's simple fixes, you know, like if we have a burgundy wall in our living room, I'm not sure that people necessarily feel good these days. Burgundy was, you know, a great color 20 years ago, you know, but now everything's white and bright and creamy and natural, you know?
Yes.
I'm not sure I answered your question.
Well, it's okay. I'm sure you did somewhere in there. We'll get the snippets, I'm sure. Yes, I have never experienced more shades of white than being with my wife and painting houses and being like, hey, we're going to do this color. It's, you know, cloud white, or I don't even know the different names of white. So yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, it all has a purpose and it all has a thought behind it, which is perfect. So I don't see any questions. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add to what you just said, Matt, because my philosophy with design is that I could tell you the gamut of whites and neutral colors and I mean, I think this is my signature in whatever home I do, is that, you know, when we're painting, we paint on a white canvas. We don't start with a multicolored canvas or, you know, a dark purple or, you know, a dark blue canvas most of the time, you know, unless you're a certain kind of artist. But, you know, so I try to keep it neutral so that your accents can be, you know, what people see and what jumps out. And then, you know, 5 years down the road, if you decide, you know what, I don't like blue anymore, or I don't like pink anymore, I don't like, you know, black and, you know, white, I can change, you know, that, but it's not going to cost me a lot of money in terms of, you know, changing my whole house or repainting my whole house. So having a neutral background, and I don't know whether it's better for you for pictures, but I have the feeling it's easier to take a picture of a white room with beautiful accessories than it is to take a picture of a brown room with, you know, lots of different colors in it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And not even just different colors, just different solid tones, and getting those tones right, just because of the way I generally shoot with bracketing, exposure bracketing. The byproduct of that is color shifting, and getting that right in the computer, editing the photo. Sometimes the more picky ones, I shouldn't even use the word picky, the more astute ones that are paying attention say, you know what, that wall's a little off. It's not quite that shade. So I'll play with it a little bit. And, you know, if it requires me going back to just check my eye with my laptop and be like, oh, okay, that's what it is. So sometimes there's some trickery that goes on there that, you know, I'm just not getting it right. But for the most part, it's okay. It's just different. If there's sun pouring into the room from a big window, and the room is like filled with light and it looks amazing and everything's sun cast and it looks great. Generally speaking, I find people aren't looking at the brown wall. So there's details, and I have that conversation with a lot of the owners of homes I go into, is that, you know, they're asking me about a little detail in the house, you know, a scuff on the wall that little Timmy put in 10 years ago. It's like, you know, are you going to see this? And it's like, well, listen, you're going to see it because you know it's there, but I can almost bet you that anyone looking at this picture is never going to see that, because they're just not looking for little details like that. They're not looking for things like that. They're looking at the space. And then If
Yeah.
they're happy with that, they're going to come in and come
Mhm.
see the space in person, and that's when they'll point it out. But I'll be long gone by then, so it's fine. So it's one of those things that um, it's hyper focused versus the uninitiated. So you kind of have to take a step back, I find, and maybe you could speak on that too. Is that you get so zeroed in on what you're doing and what you're looking at that sometimes you just gotta step back and go, you know what, this looks great. Okay, this looks fantastic. I know what to do differently for next time. So maybe actually you could speak on that too, because your projects are generally longer term. They go longer than my shoots last a day type of thing, whereas yours go months, sometimes years. So maybe you can speak on that.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think I actually, this is what I was dealing with at a project today. So when you walk into a space, and it's what we do is very similar, right? Design, and obviously you're taking pictures of the design. So, but when you walk into a space and something catches your eye in a negative way, that's what there's like, that's a sign, like, something isn't working with that, And so if you walk into a room a few times and, there's too much of something, or, I mean, I'll tell you on the new project what it was today. Gold is all the rage right now, and gold accessories and gold
Yeah.
lights and handles and whatever. So I've incorporated gold in some of my properties already. And, I think it's beautiful. And so this new property, I said, okay, well, I'm going to go a little bit more bold with it. And I'm going to, incorporate a little more gold. And it kind of like every time I go in there, I walk in and I say, it's too much, and so I have to trust my instinct that when something is jumping out at me, that bugs me, whether it's in a photo, whether it's like walking into the room, okay, I have to make a change. And I think people are sometimes afraid of making the changes once they've made a decision to choose something, to choose a light, to choose handles or whatever. If something bugs you when you walk in a room, if something's in the picture that is, you notice every single time your eye is drawn to that, you need to change it. And over the long term, it's worth it to change it out than to live with it, So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these handles painted, half of the handles painted black, believe it or not. So, because you have to be subtle about, but design is as well. It's trial and error, and you have to kind of figure it out. I mean, I'm always amazed, like when you take pictures, that you might take 100 pictures and there's 20 good ones, not because of you, but because, either the subject or but the really fantastic ones, like we don't get it right 100% of the time. And so we have to, we have to test and we have to see like, what's working in that space. So, for me, this new project is it's a different beast, if you could say. And, I'm trying to push my style a little bit, and I'm testing different things, and it's trial and error, but I actually think that it would photograph really amazing. And I think my contractor and I, who's awesome, we've had a great time doing this house, and we keep saying that we've got to showcase the before and after of this property. So you might be making a trip to Montreal soon to
No problem.
Yeah, because it's when we bought this property, it was 1950s kitchen. It had the original, if you can imagine, like the original stove. It was all the original appliances in the kitchen. It was just unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah. And, the hanging cabinets in the middle of the kitchen, those glass cabinets in the middle of the kitchen. It was linoleum on the countertops. It was just unbelievable. So, the before and after is pretty spectacular. If, you want to come take a look.
Totally. I've shot a number of houses, and maybe the people that are watching that have Italian grandmothers can comment on this, but I've shot houses where I'll go in and the kitchen is completely untouched from 1962 or something like that. Like
Yeah.
green rounded fridge, green stove. I went into one and the fridge had the tags hanging in it, like it had literally never been opened or used. But you went into the basement and it had a full kitchen, brand new, like island and gorgeous and used every single day, pot of soup cooking or something. And I was just like, this, what's happening here? Like, why is that kitchen, and it's like, oh, it's a older grandmother and, she never used this kitchen. And I'm like, okay, cool. But so I'm loving the older kitchen, the vintage style, right? Because it's so nice and sharp and crisp and looks great. So, um, but yeah, I definitely just got, as soon as the house sold, I'm sure got completely torn down and renovated into something new. But how times change.
Yes. And what do people ask you most for when you're taking photographs of, I mean, you do condos, you do houses, like what are the agents and what are people asking you for the most? Like what's the most
Uh,
important? Is it a room? Is it the kitchen? Is it the outdoors? Like what would you say that?
well, with condos, it's always the view or lack of view. So they're always trying to work at that, I really want a shot from this angle so you see out this way out of the room, right? Because they want to get that light right or the view out the window right. You know, as everyone knows, the condos in Toronto are generally stacked close together unless you're higher up or in certain pockets. But there isn't a lot of view sometimes, so they're trying to avoid that in certain ways. So it's always like curtains. Should I have the curtains open or should I have the curtains closed? It's like, well, why are you asking? Are you asking because you want to hide the gigantic building there, or because you like your curtains and you want them closed? Because so it could go either way. And I'm being sarcastic, but it's there's always like a hidden message, and I just try to like, what are you trying to do, basically, and let's work with that. Like, if you want to hide the building, sure, let's work with it. I'll go from this angle and do that. So it's basically what I get asked the most is how can we hide something, or how can we um, shoot it in a way that it looks pleasing and doesn't deter people.
And you know what?
Because
That I find is so interesting because
yeah,
when the people come visit the house, they're going to see it anyway, right? So if
yeah,
you're doing a listing, so for me, I would rather show, the limitations of the house, if there are limitations to the house, like, show it for what it is, so that when you actually get, the clients who are coming, that they understand what the property is all about, right? So, you
yeah,
want the good
exactly.
quality clients, but it's funny that people, and that's your job, right?
Yeah, sorry, you broke up a little bit there, so I didn't catch the last
Yeah.
part, but I'll just touch on yes, they're going to come and see the building immediately for sure. So, and I suggest that quite often, saying like they're going to find out when you get here, but sometimes it's just that barrier to entry. It's like the market is so competitive that it's just, even seeing that in a picture is enough for someone not to call. And it may be a beautiful apartment, it may be gorgeous. It's just that one thing, right? So it's like with anything. Again, going back to the old house, when we sold it, our master bedroom, it was a bungalow and it was close to our neighbor, so it didn't get much light, and we never thought of that as a problem. We are always focusing on the living room, make the living room beautiful and make the kitchen staged up with everything that's all in place and everything was great. And then people started saying, well, the master bedroom's really dark, and it's like, okay, that's something we never considered. It's dark because it's a bedroom and you're supposed to be sleeping. But I get it. People want to open those blinds and like have the light pour over them in the morning and stuff like that. And it wasn't happening in this house. So, you have to overcome that. And those are certain types of things I run into. It's like, okay, this room is pretty dark. So I hope you can do something about that. And it's like, yeah, of course, like if that's what you want, like I will make it work. If you want it a little brighter, no problem. Especially with condos, a lot of dens are on the interior of the condo, so by like the front door, by the hallway. and there's never a window in them, so they're always super dark. So you walk in there and they've got like 15 lamps in there all plugged in. Is this bright enough? It's like, let's just get rid of some of these lamps. Like, I'll make it look fine. I'll make it look real. It's okay. Let's, we're good. So, so things like that. It's just different things that they know as a realtor that it's going to be a problem. It's going to come up in an open house or a question with viewings and stuff like that. So if they can just nip it in the bud right away and address it in the pictures, is always best way, is what I recommend anyways. So, who cares that the building is there? It's there. Open up those windows. It's a French door. It's a Juliet balcony. Let's open it up, make it bright as possible in here. And that's what we do. So.
Yeah. And I think decluttering too. Like, I'm a big advocate of, you put your tchotchkes away and all your little stuff away, and people don't want to want to walk in and they want to feel good in the space and not like they're invading somebody's privacy, right? So they want to come in and say, oh, okay, I could see myself here, not like, oh, that's like a picture of them at the Grand Canyon. Like, people don't necessarily want to see that kind of thing. But I do find that like when you put pictures up on a wall and like, you're using it as a design element, that's great. Like personal pictures or whatever it is, like you're using, I love symmetrical, black and white pictures, black frames, like, just really nice. You can do that anywhere, in a family room, a living room, a bedroom, like it's beautiful. But I don't think people want to see, your, pictures, picture frames sitting on bedside tables and that kind of thing, like it's got to be clean and simple for people to come in and feel good in the space. So
yeah, I would argue that, save from, there's certain pictures that I've seen that are bigger, you get like the bigger ones of family portraits and stuff like that. Those you could take down. But family pictures, I don't tend to find them problematic over clutter. Clutter is first and foremost. Like, basically, unfortunately, when you decide to move, as you'll find out, you need to move in order to show the place. So basically, get everything out that you don't need to live with. And it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Live in a hotel? Ideally, yes. If you could just go live in a hotel, that'd be great, because you need to get your shit out of here. And
if I could tell my kids that every time I have a showing, if I could just, guys, just like take all of your stuff and go outside, that would be like great, having two boys and having showing at your homes is not necessarily the easiest thing. So
yeah, especially in these times too, when at least in Toronto, open houses aren't allowed. So these pictures are sometimes the only thing that people have, right? So you want to put it the best way you can, and any type of clutter is going to just bog up the frame, and you want to avoid that. So so I think what's next for Miss Allana? What's up next? So you're finishing the one you're on now. When's the due date?
We're actually trying to finish up the bulk of the project this week. We are going to have landscaping in the spring, just because we've run out of time, and COVID has made it so that everybody and their grandmother and great grandmother are renovating their landscaping and redoing their landscaping. So it's been a really big challenge with getting people to the properties to do the job. So, so we should be finished this property. I'm really aiming for sometime in November, beginning of December. And then, always looking to do other properties, helping, small projects along the way, jumping in, and other people are doing some projects in the West Island and Montreal that I'm contributing to. So,
Nice.
it's always busy. Let's just put it that way. The real estate market is very hot right now. So it's, as there's a lot of people looking for properties, country properties, or in the suburbs. They're looking for land, they're looking for green space. So, the properties that I'm looking at, I'm always looking for some kind of special feature on, whatever it is. whether it's views, whether it's a big property, whatever it is, you know, lots of land, great lot, historical property, you know, I'm always looking.
Awesome.
So you never know.
Well, when the project's done, let's give you the plug here. Where can they find you and go look at it?
Basically that one will be on Allana H Home Instagram. I'll start featuring. I mean, the problem, Matt, with when you are busy designing and renovating, I don't have a lot of time for the social media stuff. So I'm gonna bring you to Montreal, and you're gonna have to do a photo shoot and a couple of videos, and you know, we're gonna do a house tour and get you to showcase the property, because
Nice.
that's your expertise and not mine. So
Yeah.
you know,
Let's just hope the floors are level. So
yeah, the floors are level. Marbles on that floor. So,
amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was great. So I hope we can do it again and keep updated on what's going on over there. And this was awesome. So thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Cheers. And
Okay.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Cheers. We'll see you later.
Okay.